A very good evening and welcome to this week's episode of our national election debates. Well, tonight's debate brought to you once again by SABC News in partnership with the University of Johannesburg. And we are coming to you live this evening from the Independent Electoral Commission's National Results Center, and that's in Pretoria, where we'll be broadcasting from for the rest of this week. Now, in tonight's debate, the last before the elections on Wednesday, the topic is accountability, good governance, and corruption. This debate is, of course, live on SABC 1, Channel 404, SAFM, with live streaming also on www.sabc.co.za/news and on YouTube channel SABC News. Now, for opening remarks on tonight's topic, I'm going to start with the African National Congress, represented this evening by its Secretary General, Mr. Gwede Mandashe. Your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you very much for your... there's been a long campaign, quite difficult, quite hectic. We're happy that it is coming to the end. The message has been given to the electorate, what we have been doing, what we commit ourselves to do. The ANC doesn't make promises, it makes commitments. And that message has been repeated over and over in all the issues, whether it is accountability, it is good governance, whether it is corruption, whether it is general delivery of services. Because development is an irrefutable argument. You can shout and howl at the ANC, but when you point to the development practically, you can't argue with development because you don't have to argue conceptually. You have to point at it.
Thank you very much. Representing the Minority Front is its leader, Shamin Thakur Rajbansi. You have the platform, ma'am.
Yeah, I greet all the viewers. Well, the Minority Front has fielded in this election candidates who have been well screened, they are knowledgeable, and they're going to go to Parliament to do three things. They're going to account, first of all, to our party. They're going to be accounting to the public out there, and then they're going to hold Parliament to account, that is the executive as well as the officials. The MF believes that we don't need a huge government. What we need is a good government, one that is effective and one that is efficient. But also 20 years into democracy, what we are fighting for in our manifesto, we want to scrap unfair laws, legislation, policies, programs, because these things are not helping to promote accountability, they are not advancing good governance, and neither are they curbing corruption. So to the voters out there on the 7th of May, they have got to be very careful to ensure that they choose their leaders in this fifth democracy very wisely. They need to put their mark behind leaders who have been tried and tested, and leaders who would want to commit to this democracy in terms of accountability, good governance, and to curb corruption in this 5 years.
Thank you very much. And representing the African People's Party is its leader, Mr. Themba Goti. Your opening remarks, sir.
Well, I must say that indeed the campaign was long and hard, and we as the APC went into these elections with a plan and were satisfied that our comrades in all the provinces have stuck to the script. The APC has over the years proven itself to be a party that is concerned about the welfare and the well-being of our people. We have consistently taken up issues that affect our people, especially the poorest of the poor, and in the rural areas, where we believe that development and service delivery is very poor and very slow. These are areas which we feel are neglected, wherein we have moved in to close the gap and to ensure that we assist in ensuring that there is accountability and that government at various levels is responsive to the needs and the expectations of the people at those levels.
Thank you very much. And representing the Congress of the People is its president, Ntate Msuwalkota. Your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you very much. I think listeners will recall that when we formed the Congress of the People, we underlined the fact that it was in defense of the Constitution. We are extremely concerned that the last 5 years have shown neglect of the provisions of the Constitution, and we think that our democracy cannot survive unless there is consistent observance of the provisions of the Constitution. Secondly, we think that given the state of our nation at the present time, in which we are confronted with a debt of 1.8 billion rand, unless our country tackles that problem, capacity to deal with challenges of development and so on are going to be very difficult to attend to. And this goes straight to the question of accountability. We need a government that is going to be willing and capable of living up to its obligations under the Constitution. To be accountable, the public protector makes certain findings. It's a creature of the Constitution. Whoever is in government must respond to this and respect that. And finally, we do think that it is important that something is done about the electoral system to ensure that power is in the hands of the people as opposed to be power being in the hands of a political party. We think that will improve accountability as well.
Thank you very much. And representing the Democratic Alliance, the official opposition, is its parliamentary leader, Ms. Lindiwe Mazibuko.
Thanks very much, Vuyo. I think there's been an effort by some in this election to paint this as a kind of 20-year review, as though the 2014 election must judge the work of the entire past 20 years. And we in the Democratic Alliance have been unequivocal in stating that there is no question that life is better today than it ever was before 1994, and that in fact to use apartheid as a benchmark for excellence is misleading. What we should be doing is using our potential, what we can do and what we can achieve as a nation as that benchmark. So that is not up for debate as far as the DA is concerned. What we're very much concerned about is the past 5 years. And in the past 5 years, there are two issues which have surfaced which are going to be critical in this election. The one is corruption and the other is jobs. We in the DA have shown ourselves to be an outstanding provincial government in the Western Cape and local government in 28 municipalities at making sure that our public representatives are accountable, that our governments are efficient, that they spend well. And we've also been able to make a few changes in the economy to be able to create jobs. But in fact, the ultimate test of accountability and good governance is in the hands of the voters. It is an election. And this election must be judged on the past 5 years in office, and it mustn't turn into a history lesson of the past 20 years. We are all deeply grateful for our freedom, and we're grateful to the people who brought it to us. But now's the time to focus on the issues that will enable people to move forward over the next 5 years.
The reason we came to sort of discuss this particular issue this evening is because from all the debates we've done, this is the 11th. There seems to be, certainly in the case of the majority of the parties, that there isn't much of a difference by way of policies. And seemingly a lot of parties are willing to actually gravitate towards the National Development Plan, of course raising issues here and there and so on. And what everyone seemed to be saying was that if we do not deal with the issue of corruption, of issues of corruption, good governance and accountability, we are doomed. Am I getting the picture correctly?
No, absolutely not. I disagree completely. I think that there is very clear blue water between certainly our political party and others about what we believe is the right economic direction the country must take and the right governance direction it must take. It's true that we agree about the National Development Plan. Broadly, we support it. But in fact, if you're looking for opposition to the National Development Plan, you need to look to the Tripartite Alliance, which is struggling with that particular document. But on the question of policy, we have a very clear set of principles about the role the state must play and the role the private sector must play in creating jobs and what governments must do to curb corruption and make sure that it doesn't hinder their service delivery mandate.
Are your policies different from those of the ANC, for instance?
There's a major problem between us and the ANC is the issue of non-compliance with the Constitution and corruption. There's no common ground there. On the general issue of how the country should go forward, every South African political party will start and has to start from the hard reality of the state of our nation. Whichever words you use, you have to solve the issues that now the country has got no resources available. It's got a responsibility to tackle its huge national debt. It's got to deal with the question of unemployment. It's got to deal with the question of lack of growth. These things are realities that compel that all of us deal with the same issues. And whilst there may be nuances as to how best to deal with it, I do think that there will be general agreement that on the majority of issues, we will agree that we must start somewhere common to take the country forward.
Mr. Godi?
Yeah, I think on the issue of ensuring that the quality of life of the African people is improved, I think we're in agreement. But the APC is very clear in terms of its ideological and philosophical foundation, that it is socialist, it is Pan-Africanist, it is Africanist.
Ms. Rajwansi?
Yeah, I think we are also very different from the ANC and other parties because we are the minority front. We are based on the fundamental value systems of the United Nations, that minority rights are human rights. In this election, we are the only party who has been calling for the scrapping of affirmative action, which directly affects the Indian and the colored communities. We have been calling for other repressive legislation and policies to be reviewed, like the Employment Equity Act, because we also have introduced in Parliament a bill that we want to be looked at like a youth employment bill, because we are looking at policies now also for jobs, but more towards full employment. So I think we are also very different from how the ANC has been looking at things.
Okay.
The ANC?
The ANC?
I'm sure you're looking for people who will be different from the ANC. The ANC agrees with the ANC in how things are done. Let me start off by explaining one thing that must be clear here, is that one of the benefits of democracy in South Africa is transparency. The fact that we debate anything and everything and no special branch visits you because you criticize a president, in itself is a benefit of being in a democratic society. Even if you distort facts, we allow you to distort facts without suing you. Now, that in itself is quite an important milestone in our democracy. That's why if we talk about corruption, sometimes we talk about corruption in very narrow terms. What people never appreciate is the fact that there are institutions that are set up to deal with corruption directly, in itself is what makes us talk about corruption more. I want people to do a research and discover that actually it is not the increase of corruption per se that is in the public domain. It is the openness about debating about corruption. Half the time when I talk about corruption, I normally say we must deal with it whether it is real or
perceived,
imagined. Even if it's an imagined corruption or it's a real corruption, it informs the thinking and the mindset of society. Therefore, it must be confronted. That's why when COPE always talk about us ignoring the Constitution, I think they are just caught in a time wasp where they have believed that there is defiance of the Constitution. But in real terms, because they talk about revising the election system, revising that, actually it is them who talk about revisiting the Constitution. When the ANC say it must be upheld, for example, I can tell you, Vuyo, if all the parties can say, let's go to the constituency system, so that we have constituencies, therefore governance should be in the hand of the public, one day we will agree. But I can tell you what that will do is to wipe up a number of parties. We won't have 33 parties on the board there. You will have 2 or 3. Because
Can I ask you to hold your thoughts right there, because we have to take a quick ad break. Remember, you at home, or if you're traveling in your car listening to us on SAFM, there are various ways in which you can participate in tonight's debate. You can send us your emails to elections@sabc.co.za, elections@sabc.co.za, or SMS us. The number is 33726. That number again, 33726. Begin your message with the word vote. Your SMS is going to cost you R1.50. For tweets, you can use the hashtag SABC Elections, and you can also find us on Facebook at SABC News Online. We'll be back after this short ad break.
I am Uhuru Muilwa, Deputy Speaker of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. also the champion of the Citizen Responsibility Campaign on behalf of the Gauteng Speakers Forum. Let us celebrate our 20 years of democracy and vote on May 7, 2014. We are proud of our democracy, confident of our future. My vote is my responsibility.
Who are we, you ask?
This is who we are.
We are technologically driven.
We are unashamedly Afrocentric.
We advise you not only on legal matters,
but on health issues as well.
We bring imagination to life.
We celebrate arts and culture and lifestyle.
We tackle life challenges head on.
We dig deep. We probe. We question.
We invite you to take a view from our house,
as we tell it without fear, separating fiction from factual.
We are the SABC News Channel.
All news, all global, all the time.
ASE, which didn't trade yesterday, opened quite strongly today and continued to trade in that fashion, almost as if it was playing catch-up.
I think that the markets have been primarily moved by the amount of liquidity which has consecutively been added or subtracted from the markets.
Ireland's official exit from its EU IMF bailout has restored national pride.
The path that has been followed for the past 3 years puts us in a position where we can now be optimistic for our country's future.
That's News at 1, daily at 1 p.m. on SABC News.
Well, if you've just joined us, whether it's on SABC 1, Channel 404, SAFM, or SABC News Online, welcome. On the eve of what is touted as probably South Africa's most important election since 1994, this is a live debate about accountability, good governance, and corruption. Ms. Mazibuko, the Secretary General of the African National Congress, says corruption is in fact not on the increase.
Before I deal with that, I want to respond to this increasingly regular argument I'm hearing from the ANC that, you know, we're lucky we live in a democracy where we can question and we can investigate because we don't have people from special branch knocking on our door. His colleague in the ANC in Parliament said during the Nkandla ad hoc committee, we should feel lucky that we live in a democracy where you can question the president and not end up in a body bag. Now, I find that incredibly sinister. I find it incredibly sinister that the ANC would act as though openness and transparency are some kind of gift that they're giving us, some kind of favor that they're doing us, and that if they had it their way, we would be in body bags or special branch would be knocking on our doors. That is not the democracy that we live in. We live under the Constitution, in which transparency and openness are pillars of the work that we do, and in which people in government should be held accountable for their actions.
Before you proceed then to your point, let's get the Secretary General of the ANC to respond.
I think Lindu is distorting me deliberately. What we are saying, the democracy is based on values. And one such value is transparency, ability to express your views without fear or favor. And we're saying that is institutionalized in South Africa. It's not a present, it's not a gift, it's a function of democracy.
But why tell us we should be lucky?
No,
we should feel glad.
No, don't howl. Be decent. Because if you are howling, you are going to spoil the debate. Be decent. What is important is that we must highlight it as a value that is developed with the development of democracy. It's not luck. But if you compare our situation with other countries, not with apartheid, that's what you do in comparison. You do a comparison among nations. What is happening in other nations? What is happening in South Africa? Why are we a lead nation when it comes to transparency, openness, and ability to engage and talk to issues? That in itself is a value derived from democracy. That's why even Comrade Terra is talking about a death trap that does not exist, because you can't theorize death trap in terms of rands and cents. You talk about death trap when you can talk of a percentage in terms of fiscal deficit and trade deficit. That's when you can begin to talk about a debt trap. You don't say 1.8 billion, therefore there is a threat of a debt. It's not working like that. It's simplistic.
Okay, you want to jump in quickly before we move on to...
So one of the difficulties in this particular debate is that we are involved in government. We are now arguing with a party functionary who really doesn't appreciate what's going on in government.
I thought he was the CEO of the ANC.
No. He's the secretary of the party. No, wait.
Elections. It is not you.
Can we have a chance to say something?
Say something.
Now.
Sensibra.
No, don't patronize. I'm just saying this. This nation is on the verge of bankruptcy, as a matter of fact. 40% in deficit is a very serious situation on any account. 2 weeks ago, we have been on the trade deficit. We have actually our trade deficit has increased. The situation is deteriorating every day, and that's why international bodies are degrading the country. This is not something that is a thumbsuck. It's a daily serious problem. The debt we have and the percentage increase on it all the time is very big. You must not also, Mr. Matasho, confuse. You must not confuse corruption with refusal by the ANC to comply with the Constitution. In the first place, the fact that President Zuma has got so many charges which he should be answering for in the court is because of your party's refusal to comply with the Constitution. The fact that he has not responded and implemented the public protector's findings and remedial recommendations is another violation and defiance of the Constitution.
Okay, you want to respond directly?
No. You see, the problem with many of these parties, Vuyo, is that they think that there should be no institutions. If I'm charged and they feel that I'm guilty, I must actually plead guilty. They don't appreciate the fact that if there is an investigation by ministers, that is institutional, that is a particular arm of government. It investigates. Then there's a public protector, it releases. Certain of the issues that are discovered in the investigation are referred to the SIU. Because we have views, we think that the SIU does not exist. It should not investigate those issues. It must be done as we think. One of the things of undermining your constitution is when you undermine your institutions. One of the ways of respecting constitution is to respect institutions.
Like the public protector.
Here's one.
Like
the public protector.
It can't. Or the special institution. It's a constitutional body.
Do you want to respond directly? Public Accounts Committee? The public protector should not be equated with the...
Yes. It's a Chapter 9
if we're talking about respecting institutions, how about we start there?
So if
the public protector is a Chapter...
Wait, let me say this. I really want to make this short point. The powers of a constitutionally conceived body or organ cannot be overthrown by some ad hoc committee or special investigating unit, which is not a creature of the Constitution.
Okay, Mr. Mandasha?
No.
You can't do that.
If you are going to respect your Constitution, respect institutions. A Chapter 9 institution is a Chapter 9 institution. And they have powers that are given to them by the Constitution and legislation. And if you go to the SIU, it is an institution that is doing investigation. And it is legislated. It has certain powers. If you put a committee of ministers, it is a cabinet committee. And the cabinet is not, one time it was described as some small committee that has no standing. Cabinet has standing in the constitution of this country.
Okay, I've got to come to the minority front and the APC, but before we do that, let's take this quick ad break.
When a man's an empty kettle, he should be on his mettle, and yet I'm torn apart. Just because I'm presuming that I could be kinda human if I only had a heart. I'd be friends with the sparrows and the boy who shoots the arrows if I only had a heart.
I am Uhuru Muilwa, Deputy Speaker of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature, also the champion of the Citizen Responsibility Campaign on behalf of the Gauteng Speakers Forum. Let us celebrate our 20 years of democracy and vote on May 7, 2014. We are proud of our democracy, confident of our future. My vote is my responsibility.
With so many bad incidents happening around us, we continue sourcing, unpacking and televising nation-building and compassionate stories. From the nation's pride, those who go all out, top achievers, hard workers, those dedicated to making this country a better place, and unusual friendships. Catch all these and more on SABC News.
Zoom into Africa. This is Libya. The chairman of the General National Congress is Mr. Nouri Abu Samen. Libya got independent from Italy on 10 February in 1947. The population is more than 6 million people. One of Libya's major languages spoken is Arabic. Monetary unit, Libyan dinar.
Welcome back, and if you've just joined us, you are watching and listening to a live debate about good governance and the corruption in our country. Now, before we took that ad break, I want to come to you, Mr. Godi. We're talking about respect for the very institutions that actually ensure that we deal with corruption, that ensure that good governance is a reality in South Africa and not theory.
No, indeed. The best way to respect the Constitution is to respect the institutions of state that are meant to give life to the injunctions of the Constitution.
And they have made their positions clear? In your view, are they being respected by the ANC or not?
Look, I don't think that we have a constitutional crisis in our country. And I'm sure the question of the extent or the degree to which there is respect or not is a matter of political opinion. And, you know, with the elections around the corner, we always have all this variety of debates. But
so you don't share?
No. I don't think that we have a crisis wherein institutions in the Constitution are being trampled on a daily basis. We may argue about what has happened or what should not have happened, but I don't think that we are in a crisis situation where institutions, you know, are being ignored willy-nilly.
Ms. Rosbansi, is that your view as well?
Yes, it is my view, because we're a very robust democracy, but we must be very realistic, because, you know, we're always benchmarking ourselves against the global indices. So on the corruption indices, we're very high. On the HDI, we're very low. So something's really wrong in our country. South Africa is, day by day, becoming increasingly lawless. That's the truth. You look at the cash heist a few days ago, 90 million. I mean, it just comes before an election. You look about the political killings. Now, all these things, you see that corruption increases, crime increases. So that is why the MF also called for the reinstatement of the death penalty, because we really believed we needed a stringent measure now. And the Constitution is not cast in stone. It can be changed. But I want to tell you about our views. How do we curb corruption? properly going forward. NDP 2030 has to be achieved. You need an active citizenry. We are asking for two things, a different or an alternate oversight model for Parliament, not one designed by Parliament, but also a value chain public participation model for every single department. Because there's so many ways that the communities can actually interact with Parliament, and we are not utilizing all, whether it's polls, whether it's surveys, whether it's forums, whether it's panels, whether it's commissions. There are lots of tools, and we need to we need to use every single tool to get people on board. That's what NDP 2030, one of the third pillars, is an active citizenry. And going forward, if we want to achieve it, we have got to make creative use of those tools. Then only we're going to find the curbing of protests in this country, the curbing of violence, because we don't need to kill our people when they open their mouths. We need to advise them.
Does that apply to the ANC or to all the parties that are in Parliament?
Well, it applies to all the parties in Parliament, and that is why smaller parties are very effective, because they bring new things to the table, and they make a noise continuously, so they conscientize their entire Parliament. So you don't have to be a bigger Parliament to be a quality party.
Okay. Yeah. Let's take some tweets now while they are being called up. Some SMSs. The ANC has done a lot of good things, so big up to ANC. Keep up the good work. That's Natala in Limpopo. I don't understand how people say ANC is not delivering services. Mind you, our children receive education, free ARVs, free social grants, free RDPs. I don't know where that one is coming from. Doesn't say here. Without fear or favor, I don't see a party that is worth my vote, because they are all talk and no action afterwards. Let's get some tweets now. Bongani Madela says accountability and corruption is a global challenge with wide, deep roots, which is not a new challenge in South Africa. Sbozita Mgwengwe says the only way to eradicate corruption is by implementing the law without fear or favor.
Quite right.
Margaret Ganda says if this money had not been lost to corruption, I wonder whether South Africa would even need economic freedom. You were agreeing there with
Vuya, I feel like we're going to get lost in some philosophical discussion about institutions. Accountability is very simple. You govern, you do it well, you're elected back into office. You govern, you do it badly, you're held accountable for that action. And accountability can come from institutions investigating you, like the Public Protector investigating President Zuma over Nkandla, or they can come from Parliament holding you accountable. All of these institutions play a role. But the Auditor General can write all the reports he wants, the Public Protector, Parliament can have all the investigations they want. They all mean nothing if there's no consequences. Zwelinzima Vavi once said of the ANC, it's become the party of absolutely no consequences. ANC, absolutely no consequences. That is how people feel about corruption in South Africa today. There's lots of reports detailing in black and white what happened, who was responsible, but there are absolutely no consequences. And in fact, the reverse is true. Huge efforts are gone through to protect all of the most corrupt people and prevent them from being held accountable.
No, I think Lindiwe is suffering from recency, effect of recency.
Don't be personal, man.
Just argue.
Let me explain my recency. Over the last 5 years, she said must talk about last 5 years, we have seen more ministers in the history since 1994 removed from position purely on the strength of reports of the Public Protector. So this thing of no consequences is not factual, actually. It is imagined. Now, number two, corruption, if you want to defeat it, it's like crime. That's why I say institutional framework should be respected, because the only deterrent is arrest, prosecution, and conviction. And the reason that these arms of government are independent of each other is because Parliament should not feel that they have a strong view on the particular matter. Therefore, justice system must listen to them. It must go through the process of the justice system. The strongest deterrent is arrest, prosecution, and conviction. And in South Africa, there is a temptation of subjecting people to what we call public judgment, where people think and pass judgment on their own, and they think that that is law. But institutions must be respected. That is what Constitution is. Constitution is about those institutions.
If I may.
More ministers have been chucked out of cabinet. So it is a party of consequences for
No. Well, if that is, there's no consequence. The late Shikeka spent a lot of public funds and did whatever he did. He was never, it was proven that that had happened. He didn't deny that. In the end he had to accept it. He never was required to pay that money back, and he was kept in cabinet until he passed away. No consequence.
He was not kept in cabinet.
Just a moment, let me finish. He was kept in cabinet for a long time. In fact, when he left there, it was because of his health consequences. No. Then there is the issue of Diana Pule. What about the public funds she wasted and so on? Has she been made to pay it? Nothing.
No, you see, 1 minute they appreciate the value of this institution. The second moment they ignore it. You know, the SIU has what is called Asset Forfeiture Unit. Once there is an investigation and it is found that you have enriched yourself unduly, and you are investigated by the SIU, the Asset Forfeiture Unit should actually attach property and recover that money.
Has it done so?
So they should deal with it.
No, wait. All I'm saying is that it is not a question of thinking that I can call him to Lutuli House and say to him, pay back the money. They are institutions. That's why when there is an issue in Parliament, that person will either go to the Ethics Committee in Parliament and they will make a pronouncement.
Because I just want to remind the people of one thing. Those same ministers who were taken out because of so much of pressure that came from Parliament and the people, but they're appearing again on the ANC list.
Precisely.
So how do we deal with that?
I don't know who is appearing on the ANC list.
Well, I know it was Dina Pule. It was some of the others. It was reported in the recent papers.
Well,
the number of them that are coming back to Parliament, or their spouses, or their family members.
Can I give them facts? Because sometimes when we discuss from darkness, Dina Pule withdrew from that list publicly.
But she had to withdraw. She was still nominated.
She was not removed by the party.
No, wait. We don't nominate people in an electoral college. We don't have an electoral college. Branches of the ANC nominate people. They find their names in the list. Branches of the ANC, who are the most democratic party in the country, branches of the ANC nominate people who don't send CVs and be screened by an electoral college. Once you get into that list, then you get screened again. We look into two issues. The first thing we look into is what is required constitutional. If you have no conviction and you have not served more than 12 months, you are eligible to go to Parliament. Then we invoke internal processes like the Integrity Commission that confronted Diana Pule, and out of the pressure from the Integrity Commission, withdrew from the list. Now, to repeat it as a fact that Diana Pule is on the list is actually dangerous.
Mr. Kodi, are they a party of no consequences from where you sit?
Well, I think, firstly, the legislative framework for accountability is almost perfect in the country. The challenge, however, is implementation in a robust and substantive sense. Whether you talk about the reports that come from Parliament in relation to how the executive should react to them, or when you look at how communities would be raising up issues to which they feel that whether it's local government or provincial government is not responding enough, I think there you still have a gap that needs to be closed so as to ensure that the legislative framework that governs how we should account to the people is actually fully implemented.
For now, we're going to take a quick ad break. When we come back, we'll look at some of the examples of the corruption that the panelists are talking about and how they have been dealt with, and whether, in fact, it is how they should be dealt with. That's after this short ad break.
Jessica the hippo was found after she was washed down the river shortly after birth. Today, she is a large hippo and still returns for feeding and human interaction.
She also loves body exfoliating. She has a mask as well.
Jessica is the world's most famous hippo, and perhaps she's the only one who has forgotten how aggressive she's supposed to be.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Good evening and welcome to yet another edition of Sports Live, the show that brings you the latest local and international news, live interviews with the who's who in sport. He's the first South African to wear a yellow jersey that was at the Tour de France this year.
It's the first time that we get a boxer who's recognized by the Ring magazine as the best fighter in the planet to visit our country.
And he's very close to world record pace. And in fact, it is a new world record.
When you cross the line, what went through one's mind?
None of the four of us knew who had won. The scoreboard is always on the left, but all of us tend to the right. No, we just waited for the country to go down. RSA.
That's Sports Live, daily at 8:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Who are we, you ask?
This is who we are.
We are technologically driven.
We are unashamedly Afrocentric.
We advise you not only on legal matters,
but on health issues as well.
We bring imagination to life.
We celebrate arts and culture and lifestyle.
We tackle life challenges head on.
We dig deep. We probe. We question.
We invite you to take a view from our house.
As we tell it without fear, separating fiction from factual.
We are the SABC News Channel.
All news, all global, all the time.
Zoom into Africa. This is Ethiopia. The Prime Minister is Mr. Haile Mariam Desalegn. Ethiopia is Africa's oldest independent country. It was never colonized. The population is more than 80 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit, birr.
Well, if you've just joined us, this is a live debate brought to you by SABC News in partnership with the University of Johannesburg. Tonight, we're talking accountability, good governance, and corruption. Before I get to specific questions that have been asked of some of our panelists here, I want to come to you, Mr. Gordy. I want us to talk like concrete examples, so that because these are the sort of things that people look at and say there is or isn't corruption. Do you have specific examples of corruption and how those have been dealt with, and whether that indicate whether in fact we are doing what we're supposed to do or not?
Well, look, corruption is corruption because it goes against a particular legislative injunction. And currently we have the Public Finance Management Act as the instrument that guides how public funds should be utilized. And the Auditor General, at the end of each financial year, goes to check on the books of the state on how money has been used. I must say that at national level, the picture is much, much better. And it gets worse as you go down to the municipalities. Your major problem is regular expenditure. That is where expenditure does not follow proper policies. And secondly, it's instances where there is fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and these reports are always there in the annual reports of departments and entities. Now, the challenge, however, has always been one, the follow-throughs, the actions that get to be taken thereafter, and secondly, the quality of the management within institutions, not only in relation to pursuing this, but in preventing, because the most important thing is how do you prevent these things from happening?
When you sit there as the chairperson of SCOPA, listening to all these parties, various departments, various government departments and their leaders, where do you put the blame? In other words, at the end of it all, well, when all has been said and done, who is not doing what?
Well, it is at two levels for you. One, it is at a political level, political leadership from the political head of the department. But
These are ministers.
That's the minister and your MECs. And secondly, is at the level of the administrative heads, that is your directors general, because the Public Finance Management Act was meant to allow managers to manage and then account. Okay. But I think that's where you have the shortfall.
Secretary General of the ANC, the APC says your ministers performance leaves a lot to be desired.
No, there cannot be such a general statement. Those statements can be specific. There are ministers who are doing well. There are ministers who are not doing so well. There are ministers who are not doing well at all. So you can't have a general statement, but what is important, because you frame your question at the beginning as, how do you see this vis-a-vis the ANC? Now, corruption is corruption. And the reason that corruption is visible is because there are instruments to divulge it. One, for example, when we had a case of the construction companies having collaborated on the building of the World Cup Stadium and actually got a lot of money from the state unduly, and they got penalized, there was a lot of noise about why should they pay that money. Now, the point I'm making is that unless we stop thinking that corruption is a tag for the ANC, instead of seeing it as a societal matter, we're not going to defeat it. The day we discover it as a societal matter, we deal with it everywhere it manifests, we will succeed in defeating corruption.
Ms. Rosbansi? Yeah. Is it a societal matter that we should be dealing with instead of pointing fingers at the ANC?
Well, yes and no. Let me tell you why. Because good governance is based on three things. It's the government, it's business, and society, and how the relationship between and amongst these three. So if you're going to have bad governance, it also comes from society sometimes. You get elements in society and business that adds to this. So you get the entrepreneurship that's happening, you get the supply chain management processes that are weak and we are not closing those gaps. You get lots of legislation. The Public Management Amendment Bill, which is sitting in front of the President, hasn't been signed for months now, but it is a progressive piece of legislation because it's going to stop officials in the department and their families from doing business with government. So all these things need to be done if we're really speaking about good governance. But look at corruption and specific examples. And because of legislation, because everything is legislated, you look at the Manasseh report in Durban. This is corruption. You look at the millions that were lost in the Eskom deals, and you look at now the policy of the government in doing business with the parastatal. You know, we are now saying that we want 5 coal-powered stations, yet we are not going towards green jobs, which are sustainable, renewable energy. We are rather going to non-sustainable, but it's because politicians are involved in this.
Okay, we are going to come, but if you allow me, because this is an interactive show where there's comments, SMSs, as well as tweets, I want to post because I don't want to be attacked by my viewers. Question to you, in fact, Mr. Lukota. You're a former member of the ANC. You've served the ANC for many years. However, today he believes that the ANC has failed the nation. My question is, what is it that he believes his party will do differently, whilst in this day everybody can see and measure progress of the ANC that shakes Cooper in Johannesburg?
Well, actually, you know, building on what is being discussed right now, good governance is critical. The first element is to hold the president accountable for the actions of his ministers. If the president having appointed a cabinet, he has to make sure that his cabinet appoints men and women as directors general and all of that goes with it, who will comply with with zero tolerance to corruption.
Okay, we'll get Mr. Mandasha to respond to that.
One cannot start by blaming ministers. Ministers are accountable to the president. If a minister is corrupt, you remove that and put a minister that's not corrupt.
Okay, we'll get Mr. Mandasha
if the Director General
to respond.
So that's what we will do different.
Okay.
We will do that different.
Mr. Mandasha, do you want to respond?
No. You see, the problem with Comrade Terra is his very passionate agitation when he talks about the president, to the point that he actually distorts how systems work. In every ministry, there is an accounting officer. In the presidency, there is an accounting officer, and every minister must take responsibility for his action, and then the president can take action against a minister when that minister is found to be running short of what he should be doing. Now, it can't be a president who is an accounting officer and a project manager and everything. There's no system that works that way in the world.
Okay, if you may stop just there. There's a question here from Roscoe Jacobs to you, Ms. Mazibuko. The public protector is delaying an imminent investigation into the leader of the DA, Helen Zille. The complaint with the OPP is in relation to Zille abusing her power as Premier of Johannesburg in 2010 by meddling into City of Cape Town affairs. The delay is perceived as Tuli protecting the DA election campaign. Now, there's long, but in the end it says, will the DA ask Zille to step down if the imminent investigation finds Zille has abused her power of the Premier of the Western Cape by meddling into a City of Cape Town matter?
I know nothing about that investigation, whether it's ongoing or imminent, but Helen Zille has gone on record before on another issue that was being investigated by the public protector, and she said, if there was corruption found, I will resign. So you can have no doubt that there is a leader who understands the meaning of accountability and who's willing to put herself out there and say, if there is corruption, I will resign from my post. The public protector did not find corruption, and as a result, Helen Zille did not have to resign. You will be hard-pressed to find a similar attitude towards accountability in the ANC. The reverse is true. In the ANC, it's all about protection at all costs. And in that vein, I'd actually like to ask Gwede a question. There's a report in the Sunday Times today about you summoning the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Secretary to the National Assembly, and the legal advisor to make them account for setting up the ad hoc committee into the Nkandla report by the public protector. Now, earlier you said that institutions are very important to the ANC. Parliament is just such an institution. Is it true that you interfered, that you breached the separation of party and state, all in the effort to protect President Zuma? Because if that is true, it is utterly shocking.
Okay. Let me start with the Zille case. When the public protector released the preliminary report on the DA threatened to take her to court. I don't know whether that is resigning or not. And when the final report was released, after interaction between the DA and the public protector, a watered-down finding was released. My own view is that I regard that as collaboration of bad fellows. That's how I see it. Now, if you take to the point where...
You've been allowing Gwede to respond. May I respond?
Can I make the point?
Well, he's responding to what you said.
He's now saying something to which I insist on responding.
Okay,
can I make
I will give you a chance. Okay. Can you finish, Mr. Mandasha?
Can I finish by talking to the question raised by Lindy? You see, Lindy, in Lutuli House, the only people we summon there are political deployees. We don't summon teachers. We don't supply functionaries to Lutuli House. That's my answer.
So you're saying here on national television, you did not summon Mr. Kaso, you did not summon Ms. Adikari to Lutuli House to explain to you why they set up this committee in Nkandla?
He says he did, but they are political deployees.
No.
They are not political deployees.
No, they're not political deployees. If I had to ask a question, I would ask the question for Max Sisulu. That's the person I have a responsibility to ask if there's an issue. Or Stone Caesar.
So in fact you did. You summoned them to Lutuli House for executing their duty under the Constitution to hold the President accountable.
No. I'm explaining to you, say I summoned a group of people. I don't talk to officials in any department or in Parliament. I want you to go away here very clear. I talk to political deployees who are parliamentarians of the ANC on any matter, whether it is Gandla or anything, I will talk to political deployees of the ANC on a matter.
Okay, we're going to take a quick ad break. We'll be back right after this.
Hello and welcome to Network. My name is Sphumelele Zondi.
Currently, we've got 3 apps that we've developed: the Q Marshal app, a commuter app, and a taxi association app.
The Chinese e-commerce company Alibaba Group Holding has decided to pursue an IPO in New York. Safaricom wants to introduce M-Pesa to Kenya's popular matatu industry. This will enable commuters to pay taxi fares using mobile money.
That's Network, Sundays, 7:30 p.m. on SABC News.
As the biggest, the most extensive, diverse news organization and the best content provider of choice in Africa, we aim to offer the nation breaking news, continuous content updates, and current affairs programming throughout the day. We are extremely devoted to putting the news in context and providing the nation with the news they want in their own language. We reflect the world to the nation and the nation to itself. This is SABC News. All local, all global, all the time. Exclusive to DSTV.
Good evening, I'm Peter Ndora and you're watching SABC News Prime Time.
A very good evening, I'm Vabakshini Chetty. A hybrid eclipse is very rare. The last one occurred in 2005 and the next one is predicted for April 2023. Deposed Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi remained defiant on the first day of his trial. He appeared in a Cairo courtroom from inside a cage. The trial was adjourned until January after Morsi disrupted the proceedings.
That's Primetime News, daily at 6 p.m. on SABC News.
Your World on DSTV channel 404. Let's take a look at stories making headlines.
Unfortunately, most of the deaths occur in children in sub-Saharan Africa. And so the original focus and the continued focus of this vaccine is on preventing that disease and death.
What happens when you stop by an official who turns out to be, well, the president?
We're checking license.
Okay.
Is it fine and valid?
This stand is the biggest stand in Nairobi show. Of course, we have won the best foreign private exhibitor.
And that was Your World on SABC News, 404 on DSTV.
Welcome back to the last part of this debate. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Ms. Mazibuko, your 30 seconds, closing remarks.
The key to accountability is consequences. In the ANC, they don't exist. The only political parties that can be taken seriously on the issue of accountability are those who follow through, who when they find that there's been wrongdoing, mismanagement, misspending, tender irregularities, that people are arrested and taken to prison, that they end up in court, that there are consequences for their actions. Any political party that in one breath claims to champion anti-corruption but goes to great lengths, including possibly violating the Constitution to protect corrupt leaders, cannot be serious about accountability.
Mr. Koto?
Indeed, because the taxpayers pay so much money, it is vital that we protect the money they have paid to the state, and therefore we must have no compromise with anybody found tampering with public funds. It's the only way that we can stamp it out in government, for starters. The rest in the broader society can follow.
Mr. Godi?
Accountability and transparency are the core principles of our new constitution. And as the APC, we have, throughout our existence and in all things we do, sought to ensure that there is accountability by all organs of state to our people, especially the rural poor.
Ms. Rojansi?
Yeah. Well, corruption has become systemic in our country, and for this reason we have a lack of service delivery and we have protests. I want to say that on behalf of the Minority Front, every member of any party, every leader of a party must sign a leadership creed before they even put a foot in the door of Parliament. This is the only thing that's going to stamp out corruption, it's going to promote accountability, and it's going to advance good governance.
Mr. Mandasha?
The ANC has been driving more transparency in governance, and we're happy with the results that we're one of the most transparent societies in the world. We'll intensify our fight against crime and corruption. It's a commitment, and I will give Malindwe a homework. I will be watching the space of the arrested councillor in Heidelberg for selling houses of the DA.
I'm afraid that's where we're going to leave it. Well, join us again next week at the same time for the very final debate in this election, when we'll be coming to you live from the campus of the University of Johannesburg. For now, it's good night, but for Channel 404 viewers, you can still join me at 7:30 for another discussion on this election.
It's all about last-minute electioneering. Across the country, party heavyweights try to sway voters in their direction. And residents in Uppington are proud to show their colours. Economic transformation will be a key priority in the administration of the ruling party. This is according to ANC President Jacob Zuma. He was addressing thousands of party faithful at their Siyangoba rally in Soweto.
The man of the moment.
President Zuma.
The ANC president.